Beneath the chandelier, the Blackwood Grand Palace Hotel stood like a gleaming jewel in the heart of Vienna, its marble facade reflecting the afternoon sunlight. Inside, preparations for the annual Renaissance Charity Ball were underway, an event that attracted Europe's wealthiest individuals to support the arts while flaunting their social status. Daniela Moreno adjusted her plain black uniform as she entered through the staff entrance. At 28, her delicate features and warm brown eyes carried both determination and fatigue. 6 months ago, she'd left her home in Barcelona after her father's dance studio had closed, forcing her family into debt. Her mother's deteriorating health only compounded their struggles. Vienna offered better wages, and Daniela had secured this position through relentless persistence. "Daniela, you're assigned to the grand ballroom today," instructed Madame Beaumont, the head of housekeeping. "Mr. Blackwood is personally overseeing the preparations. Remember, be invisible," Daniela finished with a slight smile. "I know." Harrison Blackwood, owner of the international Blackwood hotel chain, prowled across the ballroom floor, his tailored Italian suit emphasizing his tall, imposing frame. At 35, he had transformed a modest inheritance into a hospitality empire through ruthless business acumen and an obsessive attention to detail. "Those floral arrangements are completely wrong," Harrison snapped at the decorator. "I specifically requested white orchids, not lilies. Fix it immediately." His steel blue eyes narrowed as he surveyed the room, finding fault with nearly everything. His fiancée, Victoria Kensington, tapped away on her phone nearby, barely glancing up. The daughter of a British aristocrat, Victoria's elegant beauty had graced countless magazine covers. Their engagement, announced 3 months prior, had been hailed as the society match of the year. "Darling, do try to relax," Victoria drawled. "No one will notice the difference between flowers?" "I'll notice," Harrison replied tersely. "Excellence is in the details." As the afternoon wore on, Daniela moved efficiently between tasks, dusting the ornate moldings and polishing the brass fixtures. She hummed softly to herself, a habit from childhood when she would practice dance steps while helping clean her father's studio. The ballroom slowly transformed into a wonderland of crystal and silk. Daniela paused momentarily by the grand piano, her fingers hovering over the keys without touching them. Music had always been her sanctuary, and dance her truest language. "What do you think you're doing?" Daniela startled at Harrison's sharp voice behind her. "I'm sorry, sir. I was just—" "You're paid to clean, not to admire the instruments," Harrison said coldly. "If I wanted an audience, I'd sell tickets." Victoria approached, her silk dress rustling. "Harrison, don't waste your breath. The help doesn't understand the value of these things." Daniela's cheeks burned with humiliation, but she kept her expression neutral. "Of course. I apologize." Later that evening, as guests began to arrive in their finery, Daniela was assigned to refresh the ladies' powder room. She carried a tray of fresh hand towels when she rounded a corner and collided directly with Victoria, who had been rushing in the opposite direction. The champagne flute in Victoria's hand tipped, sending pale liquid cascading down the front of her couture gown. "You stupid girl!" Victoria shrieked. "This is a 30,000 euro Dior." Harrison appeared immediately, his face thunderous. "What happened here?" "Your incompetent maid ruined my dress," Victoria hissed. All conversation in the vicinity halted. Dozens of elegant faces turned to watch. Harrison looked at Daniela with such contempt that she physically recoiled. "Do you have any idea what you've done? People like you will never understand true refinement. It's not something that can be learned. It's inherited." Daniela's voice was quiet but steady. "I apologize for the accident, sir. I'd be happy to help with the cleaning bill." Harrison scoffed. "On your salary? Don't be absurd. Just get back to work and try not to destroy anything else." As Daniela retreated, her face burning with shame, she heard Victoria's musical laugh. "Honestly, Harrison, I don't know why you keep these locals on staff. They're so provincial." Daniela slipped into an empty service corridor, pressing her back against the cool wall. Her hands trembled slightly, but she refused to cry. This job was her lifeline, her family's only hope. No amount of humiliation could make her jeopardize that. Taking a deep breath, she straightened her uniform and returned to her duties. As the evening's festivities commenced, she became what they wanted, invisible, silent, and beneath notice. But beneath her quiet exterior, something else stirred. A reminder of her father's words from long ago. True grace isn't worn, mija. It lives in the heart. Unexpected talents. The Renaissance Charity Ball was in full swing when disaster struck. Harrison Blackwood's perfectly orchestrated evening began to unravel when his assistant approached with a panicked expression. "Mr. Blackwood, we have a serious problem," she whispered urgently. "The Viennese string quartet has canceled. Their lead violinist was in an accident on the way here." Harrison's jaw tightened. "That's impossible. The performance is scheduled to begin in 20 minutes. Victoria clung to his arm, her recently changed gown catching the light. "Darling, you must have a backup plan." For a world-class string quartet? They were flying in specifically for this event. Harrison hissed through clenched teeth. The hotel's entertainment director approached, his face ashen. "Sir, we've contacted every available performer in the city. Everyone's booked for the Vienna Festival tonight?" Harrison surveyed the ballroom, where Europe's elite chatted over champagne, completely unaware of the impending disaster. This event wasn't just about charity. It was about cementing the Blackwood brand as synonymous with perfection. In a corner of the room, Daniela was quietly replacing empty champagne flutes when she overheard the conversation. She hesitated, her heart pounding. What she was considering could cost her job. But something inside pushed her forward. "Excuse me," she said softly, approaching the group. Harrison's cold glare cut through her. "This is a private conversation." Daniela took a deep breath. "I couldn't help overhearing about the performers. I studied at the Barcelona Conservatory of Music and Dance before I had to leave. I could perhaps perform something if it would help." Victoria's laugh was immediate and cutting. "A maid? Performing at the Renaissance Ball? How droll." The entertainment director looked desperate enough to consider it, but Harrison dismissed her with a wave. "Thank you, but we'll find a professional solution." As they moved away, Daniela returned to her duties, cheeks burning once again. She shouldn't have spoken up, shouldn't have exposed herself to further ridicule. 15 minutes later, with no solution in sight, panic had begun to spread through the organizational team. Guests were already being seated for the performance portion of the evening. Harrison stood at the edge of the ballroom, his perfect veneer cracking as he contemplated the humiliation of announcing there would be no entertainment, after promising a cultural experience beyond compare in all the invitations. The hotel's elderly concierge, Monsieur Pascal, who had witnessed Daniela's rejected offer, approached Harrison. "Sir, if I may," he said discreetly, "I've heard Miss Moreno practicing occasionally in the staff quarters. Her talent is extraordinary." Harrison stared at him incredulously. "You're suggesting I allow a housekeeper to entertain some of the wealthiest people in Europe?" "I'm suggesting you allow an artist to share her gift," Pascal replied simply. "What do you have to lose?" With no other options, Harrison reluctantly agreed. "Find her! She has 5 minutes to prepare." When Daniela was summoned, she could hardly believe it. "You want me to perform?" "We're desperate," Harrison said bluntly. "What exactly can you do?" "I dance," she replied. "And I play piano. I can perform Memories of Andalusia. It's a piece my father choreographed that combines both." Harrison looked skeptical but nodded toward the stage. "Don't make me regret this more than I already do." As Daniela disappeared to prepare, Victoria sidled up beside Harrison. "This will be deliciously catastrophic," she whispered. "At least we'll have something to laugh about later." 5 minutes later, Harrison took the stage to make his announcement. "Ladies and gentlemen, due to unfortunate circumstances, our scheduled performers were unable to join us." A murmur of disappointment rippled through the crowd. "However, we are fortunate to present an alternative entertainment this evening." His pause and careful wording conveyed his low expectations perfectly. When Daniela stepped onto the stage, few recognized her without her uniform. She wore a simple black dress borrowed from the coat check attendant, her dark hair released from its tight bun to fall in waves around her shoulders. She had removed her shoes, standing barefoot on the polished stage. Victoria leaned over to her friend Olivia. "Is that the maid from earlier? This should be entertaining." Daniela nodded to the house pianist, who began the gentle opening notes of the Spanish composition. For the first few seconds, she stood completely still, her eyes closed, absorbing the music. Then she began to move. The transformation was immediate and absolute. Gone was the reserved, invisible woman who had scurried through the ballroom hours earlier. In her place was a vessel of pure artistic expression. Her body created shapes of heartbreaking beauty, telling a story of longing, loss, and resilience with every gesture. When she reached the piano, her hands joined the melody, adding complex harmonies while her feet continued their rhythmic dialogue with the floor. The ballroom fell silent except for the music. Waiters stopped serving, guests stopped speaking, and everyone simply watched. Harrison found himself unable to look away. He had witnessed performances in the greatest concert halls around the world, but never had he seen technique and emotion so perfectly married. There was no artifice in her movement, no pandering to the audience, only truth expressed through the language of her body. Halfway through the piece, Daniela incorporated elements of flamenco, her bare feet striking the floor with controlled passion, creating percussion that complemented the piano. Each stomp and gesture carried the pride and fire of her heritage, unapologetic and magnificent. When she finished, the final note hanging in the air, there was a moment of complete silence. Then the room erupted. The applause was thunderous, with guests rising to their feet in spontaneous appreciation. Calls of "Brava!" echoed through the ballroom. Several of the older patrons were discreetly wiping tears from their eyes. Victoria stared in disbelief. Next to her, Harrison remained seated, his expression unreadable. But something had shifted in his eyes, a crack in the perfect facade of judgment he had worn all evening. As Daniela took a modest bow and quickly exited the stage, the buzz in the room was palpable. Who is she? Was that really a member of the staff? I've seen performances at La Scala that weren't half as moving. The director of the Vienna State Ballet approached Harrison immediately. "Mr. Blackwood, your performer. I must speak with her." That technique combined with such raw emotional presence. It's exactly what our company seeks. Harrison found himself suddenly protective. She's employed here? Surely not as a housekeeper with that level of talent, the director persisted. For the remainder of the evening, the conversation centered not on the exquisite food or the charitable contributions, but on the unexpected performance that had left everyone spellbound. Harrison watched as Daniela, now back in her uniform, resumed her duties as if nothing extraordinary had occurred. When their eyes met across the room, he was the first to look away. Beyond appearances 2 weeks after the Renaissance Ball, Harrison Blackwood found himself distracted during executive meetings. The hotel's operations continued with typical efficiency, but his thoughts repeatedly drifted to the night, when his carefully constructed worldview had been challenged by a barefoot housekeeper. "The quarterly projections look excellent," his financial director was saying. "The publicity from the ball has increased bookings by 30%. Harrison nodded absently. "Has there been any particular mention of the entertainment?" His team exchanged glances. "Actually, yes," the marketing director replied. "Several guests posted videos online. The performance has received quite a bit of attention. People are asking if we'll feature more undiscovered talent at future events." Harrison frowned. He hadn't authorized any recordings. Later that afternoon, he found himself on the executive floor, reviewing security footage from the night of the ball. He told himself it was to identify who had violated the no-recording policy, but he spent far more time watching Daniela's performance than scanning the audience for phones. "Sir?" His assistant interrupted his third viewing. "The Vienna State Ballet director has called again. He's quite persistent about meeting your employee." Harrison closed the laptop abruptly. "Tell him our staff is not available for recruitment." "Of course." "Also, Ms. Kensington has been trying to reach you all day." Harrison suppressed a sigh. Since the ball, Victoria had been increasingly demanding, as though sensing his attention slipping away. "I'll call her later." Instead of returning to his office, Harrison found himself walking through the hotel's service areas, parts of his own property he rarely visited. He nodded stiffly at surprised staff members until he reached the laundry department. Daniela was folding sheets with mechanical precision, her movements efficient, but lacking the grace she'd displayed on stage. She looked up, startled by his presence. "Mr. Blackwood," she acknowledged, immediately adopting the deferential posture expected of staff. "Miss Moreno?" he replied, suddenly uncertain why he'd sought her out. The other laundry workers pretended not to stare. "I'd like to speak with you privately." She followed him to a small conference room, her expression guarded. "Your performance," he began awkwardly. "It was unexpected." "I apologize if it wasn't what you wanted," she replied carefully. "No," he said quickly. "That's not—" He paused, frustrated by his own inarticulateness. "Why are you working as a housekeeper when you can dance like that?" Something flickered across her face. Pain, perhaps, or resignation. "Life doesn't always allow us to follow our passions, Mr. Blackwood," the ballet director has called repeatedly. "He wants to meet you." "I can't," she said, her voice firm despite its softness. "My situation is complicated." Complicated how? He hadn't meant to ask, hadn't meant to pry into her personal affairs, yet found himself genuinely curious. Daniela hesitated, weighing how much to reveal. "My father owned a dance studio in Barcelona. When the economy collapsed, he lost everything. My mother needs specialized medical care that the public system doesn't cover. I send most of my wages home. But with your talent doesn't pay immediate bills," she interrupted, then caught herself. "I'm sorry, that was inappropriate." Harrison studied her. In his world, passion was something indulged after security was established. He'd never encountered someone forced to choose between the two. "Do you still practice? You're dancing?" A small smile touched her lips. "When I can. Early mornings, before my shift. The hotel gym is empty then." He nodded, processing this information. "The Vienna State Ballet offers scholarships. Full support for promising dancers. I'm 28. Mr. Blackwood. Ballet companies want teenagers they can shape, not women approaching retirement age in dance years." Her pragmatism surprised him. He'd expected naive optimism or bitter resentment, not this clear-eyed assessment of reality. "I've taken enough of your time," he said finally. "Thank you for the clarification." As she turned to leave, he added, "The staff gym isn't suitable for dance practice. There's a private studio on the penthouse level for guest use. It's rarely occupied before 8. Daniela looked back at him, genuine surprise in her eyes. "Thank you." Over the following weeks, Harrison found increasingly tenuous reasons to visit the penthouse studio during early morning hours. He told himself he was merely confirming that his facilities were being properly utilized. The first time he observed her practice through the partially open door, he meant to watch for only a moment. 40 minutes later, he was still there, mesmerized by her dedication. Unlike her performance at the ball, this was work, grueling, repetitive, precisely controlled movement that displayed the thousands of hours behind her artistry. Occasionally, she would falter, frustration flashing across her face before she reset and began again. Her discipline reminded him of his own early days building his business, when failure was not an option, but an inevitable step toward success. One morning, she spotted him. "How long have you been watching?" she asked, not angry, but curious. "Not long," he lied. "I was just passing by." She reached for a towel, wiping perspiration from her face. "At 5:30 in the morning? In the guest area?" He almost smiled at being caught. "I own the hotel. I can go where I please." "Of course, sir." She returned to neutral politeness. "Harrison?" he said impulsively. "My name is Harrison." She nodded but didn't use his name, maintaining the employer-employee boundary he had just attempted to cross. That evening, Victoria was particularly displeased with his distraction during dinner at Vienna's most exclusive restaurant. "You haven't heard a word I've said about the wedding plans," she complained, twirling her diamond engagement ring. "What's gotten into you lately?" "Just business concerns," he replied automatically. Victoria narrowed her eyes. "Is this about that maid?" "The dancer? People are still talking, you know. Some are saying you've been hiding talent within your staff to create publicity. That's absurd." "Is it?" "You've been different since that night." She leaned forward. The performance was entertaining, I'll grant you that. But surely you recognize she doesn't belong in our world, Harrison. People like that are meant to serve people like us. That's the natural order. Harrison looked at his fiancée. Really looked at her for perhaps the first time. Her perfect features, cultivated accent, and impeccable breeding had once seemed the ideal complement to his ambitions. Now her words sounded hollow and ugly. And what world is that exactly? He asked quietly. Victoria laughed lightly. Our world. The real world that matters. Later that night, unable to sleep in his penthouse suite, Harrison stood at the window overlooking Vienna. In the reflection of the glass, he saw not the powerful businessman he'd crafted himself to be, but a man haunted by questions he'd never thought to ask. What was the true measure of a person, and why did the answer suddenly seem so important? Shattered glass ceilings, the invitation to the Viennese Opera House's annual gala sat on Harrison's desk, addressed to him and Victoria. It was the kind of event they typically attended together, a carefully choreographed dance of wealth and influence where everyone knew their roles. Harrison stared at the cream-colored card, remembering Victoria's words from their dinner 3 nights earlier. People like that are meant to serve people like us. The sentiment had once aligned perfectly with his worldview. Now it left a bitter taste. His phone buzzed with Victoria's name. He let it go to voicemail as he had with her last 5 calls. Their argument after dinner had escalated when he'd questioned her dismissal of Daniela's talent. Victoria had been outraged not by his defense of a staff member, but by his failure to automatically agree with her assessment. A knock at his office door interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," he called, expecting his assistant. Instead, Monsieur Pascal entered, the elderly concierge's formal posture betraying his aristocratic European upbringing. "Mr. Blackwood, forgive the intrusion. I thought you should know that Miss Moreno has submitted her resignation." Harrison stood abruptly. "What? Why?" "She did not elaborate, sir. She simply said it was time to return to Barcelona." "When is her last day?" "Today, sir. She's clearing her locker now." Harrison was moving before Pascal finished speaking, taking the service elevator to the staff level. He found Daniela in the employees' changing room, placing her few belongings into a small backpack. "You're leaving," he stated, causing her to turn in surprise. "Mr. Blackwood." "Yes, my mother's condition has worsened. I need to be home." He noted the shadows beneath her eyes, the tension in her shoulders. "When did you last sleep properly?" "I don't see how that's relevant. You've been working double shifts and practicing every morning." "That can't be sustainable," Daniela sighed. "With respect, sir, my employment choices are my concern. I appreciate the opportunities you've given me, especially use of the studio." "The ballet director is still interested," Harrison said. "He called again yesterday." "And I'm still 28 with family obligations," she replied with a tired smile. "Some dreams have expiration dates." Something about her quiet resignation disturbed him more than anger would have. What if there were another option? The Blackwood Foundation funds arts initiatives. We could arrange a stipend that would allow you to pursue dance while supporting your family. She stilled, studying him intently. "Why would you do that for me?" The question caught him off guard. Why, indeed? He had never shown such interest in an employee's welfare before. "Your talent deserves development," he said finally, reverting to safe, practical reasoning. "No." Daniela shook her head. "I won't accept charity, especially not from someone who sees me as a project or an investment opportunity. That's not what isn't it?" she challenged gently. "Mr. Blackwood, you've spent your life assigning value to people based on what they can do for you or how they reflect on you. You were embarrassed by me until I proved entertaining to your guests. Now you're intrigued because I represent something outside your experience. But I'm not an experience. I'm a person." Harrison felt as though she had struck him. No one in his carefully curated life spoke to him with such direct honesty. "You're right," he admitted, surprising them both. "But that doesn't mean my offer isn't genuine. Even if it is, I can't accept." She zipped her bag closed. "I need to catch my flight. Goodbye, Mr. Blackwood." He watched her walk away, feeling an unfamiliar sense of powerlessness. For the first time in years, his wealth and influence couldn't secure what he wanted. That evening, Harrison attended a board meeting at the Vienna Business Council, where Victoria's father was chairman. The engagement to Victoria had opened doors in old-world European society that had previously been closed to him despite his wealth. His new money had needed the shine of her ancient family name. Harrison. "We missed you at the symphony last weekend," Victoria's father said during pre-meeting pleasantries. Victoria attended alone. "I had business matters to attend to," Harrison replied absently, his mind still on Daniela's departure. "Speaking of business," another board member interjected, "that performance at your charity event was quite the talking point. Clever marketing, hiding such talent among your staff." Harrison bristled. "She wasn't hidden. She was undervalued, by me most of all." The awkward silence that followed was broken by Victoria's arrival. She air-kissed Harrison's cheek as if their argument had never happened. "Darling, I finalized the venue for the engagement party," she announced. 300 guests, just intimate enough. Harrison looked at her. Her perfect appearance, her practiced smile, her absolute certainty about her place in the world. He had once found her self-assurance attractive. Now it seemed merely the result of never having had her assumptions challenged. "We need to talk," he said quietly. After the meeting, "Of course," she replied, already turning to greet another board member. "No, Victoria, now." He led her to a private anteroom, closing the door on curious glances. "What is so urgent that it couldn't wait 2 hours?" she demanded. Harrison took a deep breath. "I can't marry you." Victoria stared at him, then laughed incredulously. "Don't be ridiculous." "Of course you can. Everything's arranged." "I'm not joking, Victoria. The engagement is off." Her amusement transformed instantly to anger. "Is this about that maid? Have you completely lost your mind? Do you have any idea what my family can do to your standing in Vienna?" "I'm aware of the social consequences," he said calmly. "But this isn't about Daniela, not entirely. It's about realizing that I've been chasing a version of success that isn't actually making me happy." "Happiness?" Victoria spat the word. "What is this, a children's fairy tale? We had an arrangement that benefited us both. Your new money and my old name. A perfect merger." Her naked ambition should have shocked him, but it merely confirmed what he'd already begun to understand about their relationship. There had never been love between them, only mutual advantage. "Keep the ring," he said, turning to leave. "You'll regret this," Victoria called after him. "When you come to your senses, don't expect a warm welcome back." News of the broken engagement spread through Viennese society like wildfire. By morning, Harrison's assistant had fielded calls from 3 gossip publications and a dozen social connections suddenly concerned about his mental state. His executive team eyed him warily during the morning meeting, particularly when he announced his immediate departure for Barcelona. "Sir," his operations director ventured carefully, "there are rumors circulating about your personal situation. Should we prepare a statement?" "The rumors are true," Harrison replied, signing the travel authorization. "My engagement is over. Any other questions?" No one dared ask the real question hanging in the air. Was he truly throwing away a perfect social alliance to chase after a hotel maid? The truth was, Harrison himself wasn't entirely sure what he was doing. He only knew that for the first time in years, he was acting on genuine feeling rather than calculated advantage. His private jet landed in Barcelona that afternoon. Armed with only an address from employee records, he took a taxi to a modest neighborhood far from the tourist districts. The apartment building was clean but worn, with laundry hanging from small balconies and children playing in the central courtyard. When Daniela opened her door, her shock was evident. "Mr. Blackwood, why are you here?" "I needed to speak with you," he said, suddenly conscious of his tailored suit and the curious glances from neighbors. "May I come in?" She hesitated before stepping aside. The apartment was small but neat, with simple furnishings and a few dance photographs on the walls. An older woman rested on a sofa, an oxygen tank beside her. "Mama, this is my former employer, Mr. Blackwood," Daniela explained in Spanish. "Mr. Blackwood, my mother, Elena Moreno." Harrison greeted the woman respectfully in halting Spanish. Despite her obvious illness, Elena's eyes held the same intelligent warmth as her daughter's. "What brings you to Barcelona, Mr. Blackwood?" Daniela asked, switching back to English. "I broke my engagement," he said without preamble. Daniela blinked in surprise. "I'm sorry to hear that." "I'm not." He glanced at her mother, then back to Daniela. "Could we speak privately for a moment?" They stepped onto the small balcony, Barcelona's rooftops spreading out below them. In the distance, Sagrada Familia rose toward the sky, still unfinished after over a century of construction. "Victoria was wrong," Harrison said, leaning against the railing. "About natural order and who belongs where. I was wrong, too." "And you came all the way to Barcelona to tell me this?" Daniela asked skeptically. "I came because you made me question everything I thought I knew about value, about worth." He turned to face her. "I don't want to be the man who judges people by their usefulness to him anymore." "That's commendable," she said carefully. "But what does it have to do with me?" Harrison ran a hand through his hair, a nervous gesture he rarely allowed himself. "I don't know how to do this. I've never pursued someone because I simply wanted to know them better." Understanding dawned in Daniela's eyes. "Mr. Blackwood." "Harrison, please." "Harrison," she amended. "I think you're confusing admiration with something more personal." "Maybe," he admitted. "I don't trust my own motives yet. But I do know that when you left Vienna, it felt like a light went out." Daniela's expression softened. The language of worth. 6 months later, the Barcelona Community Arts Center celebrated its grand opening in the renovated building that had once housed Moreno Dance Studio. The neighborhood had turned out in force. Families with children, elderly residents, local business owners, and city officials all mingled in the freshly painted reception area. Daniela moved through the crowd, greeting guests in a simple blue dress that allowed her to transition easily from administrator to dance instructor as needed. The past months had been a whirlwind of renovation decisions, curriculum development, and staff hiring. Through it all, she had insisted on maintaining the center's accessibility to the community where she had grown up. "Your father would be so proud," Elena Moreno said. Approaching in her wheelchair, now pushed by her full-time nurse, Sophia. The medical care provided through the Blackwood Foundation had stabilized her condition, giving her a quality of life she hadn't experienced in years. Daniela squeezed her mother's hand. "I think he would. We already have 200 students registered." "And a waiting list," added Javier, the center's administrative coordinator. "The scholarship program has been particularly popular. The scholarship fund, which covered lessons for talented students whose families couldn't afford the already modest fees, had been Harrison's suggestion. Though the Blackwood Foundation officially managed the center, he had kept his promise to respect Daniela's vision, offering guidance only when asked. "Speaking of the foundation," Javier said, "Mr. Blackwood just arrived." Daniela turned to see Harrison entering the building. Unlike his usual formal attire, he wore dark jeans and a casual button-down shirt, an outfit chosen to help him blend with the neighborhood rather than stand out. Over the past months, she had watched his gradual relaxation around her community, his genuine interest in understanding a world far removed from his own. Their working relationship had evolved into friendship, carefully maintained on both sides. Harrison had never again mentioned his feelings from that day on her balcony, focusing instead on helping her build something meaningful from her father's legacy. "Daniela," he greeted her with a warm smile. "The place looks amazing." "Just in time for the opening," she replied. "The last mural was finished yesterday." He surveyed the vibrant artwork decorating the main hall. "Local artists, teenagers from the neighborhood, part of our integrated arts program." Harrison nodded appreciatively. "You've created something special here." "We have," she corrected him. "This wouldn't exist without your support." Before he could respond, they were interrupted by the arrival of the mayor and several city officials. Daniela was called away to begin the formal ceremony, leaving Harrison to find a place among the crowd. From the small stage, Daniela welcomed everyone in both Spanish and English, acknowledging the partners and community members who had made the center possible. When she introduced Harrison as the foundation's representative, the applause was genuine. his frequent presence during construction and his willingness to listen to local input had gradually overcome initial suspicions about a wealthy foreigner's involvement in their neighborhood. After the speeches came the true celebration, performances by the center's first students. Children as young as 5 demonstrated their beginning ballet positions alongside teenagers presenting hip-hop choreography and adult students performing traditional Spanish dances. As the final number concluded, Daniela stepped forward once more. "To close our ceremony, we have a special piece," she announced. 6 months ago, 2 people from very different worlds discovered that art speaks a universal language that transcends social boundaries. This duet represents that journey. The crowd murmured in surprise as Harrison joined Daniela on stage. Few knew that he had been taking private lessons twice weekly, learning the basics of partnered dance with remarkable dedication for a beginner. The music began, a contemporary arrangement of a traditional Spanish melody. The choreography was simple enough for Harrison's limited skills, but constructed to highlight the conversation between the dancers. Where he provided steady support, she contributed technical brilliance. When he moved with straightforward intention, she answered with nuanced expression. Their performance told the story of their unlikely connection, tentative at first, then building to mutual respect and understanding. There were no lifted spins or complex sequences, just authentic movement between 2 people who had learned to communicate through more than words. When they finished, Harrison slightly out of breath but smiling, the audience responded with enthusiastic approval. Daniela caught his eye as they took their bow, a moment of private acknowledgement passing between them. The formal event transitioned into a community celebration with food, music, and spontaneous dancing. Harrison found himself drawn into conversations with locals who no longer viewed him as an outsider to be impressed, but as a collaborator in their community's growth. Later, as the party continued around them, Daniela led Harrison to the small office that had once been her father's. "I have something for you," she said, handing him a framed photograph. It was an image from the Renaissance ball in Vienna. Daniela, mid-performance, barefoot on the marble floor with her arms extended in an expression of defiant grace. Below the photo was a simple inscription, "The moment everything changed." Harrison traced the frame with his fingers. "How did you get this?" "Monsieur Pascal sent it. Apparently one of your security cameras captured it, and he thought I might want a copy." "That interfering old man," Harrison said with affection. "He knew exactly what he was doing when he suggested I let you perform that night." Daniela leaned against the desk. "Do you regret it? All the changes since then?" Harrison considered the question seriously. His life had undergone a profound transformation in the past 6 months. After breaking his engagement, he had faced social consequences in Vienna's elite circles, with several business associates distancing themselves. Victoria's family had been particularly vindictive, withdrawing their investments from his European properties. Yet for every door that closed, others had opened. His focus on community engagement through the foundation had attracted a different type of partner, those more interested in social impact than social status. The Barcelona project had become a model he was now implementing in other cities. More significantly, his personal outlook had shifted. The relentless pursuit of validation through acquisition, of properties, connections, even relationships, had given way to a more authentic measure of success. "Not for a moment," he answered honestly. "You showed me what I was missing by viewing everything and everyone as commodities to be valued based on their utility or prestige." "And what was that?" she asked quietly. "Connection," he replied. "Real human connection based on mutual respect rather than mutual advantage." Daniela studied him, noting the changes 6 months had wrought. The cold arrogance had melted away, replaced by a confident humility that suited him far better. "You've changed too," Harrison observed. "You're thriving here." She smiled. "Having purpose will do that. Creating opportunities for others like my father did. It feels right." From the main hall, the sound of music and laughter filtered in. Their 2 worlds had combined in this building, creating something neither could have built alone. "Dance with me?" Harrison offered his hand. "Not for an audience this time. Just for us." Daniela took his hand without hesitation. "I'd like that." As they returned to the celebration, moving together among families and friends of all backgrounds, the distance between the maid and the billionaire had vanished, replaced by two people who had taught each other the true meaning of worth. In the end, Clara hadn't just changed Harrison's perception of class, she had shown him that the most valuable things in life couldn't be bought or sold. And Harrison hadn't merely provided Daniela with opportunity, he had learned from her that genuine connection requires vulnerability and growth. Together, they had written a new definition of success, not measured in wealth or status, but in the courage to see beyond appearances and the wisdom to value what truly matters.